Hello everybody and welcome. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Neapolitan chord, what it is and how you can use it in your music. And let's get started with an example of what the chord sounds like. The Neapolitan chord is a chord used in special circumstances to give a distinctive sound to your music. But let's first begin by talking about the chord. Well, the Neapolitan chord is a simple major triad, and it's most commonly associated with minor keys. Importantly, the chord functions as a predominant chord in a progression. The last point is the most important thing to remember about the Neapolitan chord, and that's how it functions. So what is a predominant chord? Well, here are the chords in the key of C minor. Each of these chords have a specific function in a chord progression. The tonic is the chord all the other ones want to return to. The dominant chord, in this case, the chord G dominant 7, wants to resolve directly back to the tonic chord C minor. Well, a predominant chord thankfully functions how we would expect. It precedes a dominant chord in a progression. The D half diminished chord and the F minor chord can be considered predominant. So in a progression, you might have your tonic, followed by a predominant chord, and then the dominant chord, which wants to return back to the tonic. Here's a couple of examples, and listen to how the predominant chord sets up the dominant chord for a resolution to the tonic. Okay, so now that we know a Neapolitan chord functions as a predominant chord, how do we actually find one? A Neapolitan chord is a major triad built from the lowered second scale degree of a scale. Here are the scale degrees in our key C minor. We take the second scale degree, which is D natural, we lower it 1/2 step to D flat, and make it a major triad. Here's our previous progression example, but this time, the second time through, we'll have our Neapolitan predominant chord. While that's the basic gist of a Neapolitan chord, we're not quite done yet. We need to talk about chord inversions. And a chord inversion is when you take different notes from a chord and make that note the new root note of your chord. The reason is that while the chord stays the same, the inversion gives a different harmonic sound to your progression. Here's the chord C minor. There is no inversion because the note C natural is also the root note of our chord, and we can see that note here in the bass clef. However, if we take another note of the chord, say E flat, we can now make that note the root note. We're still using the chord C minor, but now we've changed our bass note. You'll see this notated as the chord type, followed by a slash of the new root note. So this new chord is C minor over E flat, and it's what's called a first inversion chord. And what does this have to do with the Neapolitan chord? Well, traditionally in classical music, the Neapolitan is used in first inversion. And first inversion means you use the third of a chord. And if that sounds a little confusing, we'll do another breakdown. So here's our Neapolitan chord, D flat major. And this is what's known as root position because our root note, D flat, in the bass clef is the same as the name of the chord. Now in the treble clef, you can stack the notes however you want. It's all about the note that's in the bass clef. So right now, our note D flat is in the bass clef, which is the same as our chord. But we want to use the chord in the first inversion. Remember the notes of D flat major are D flat, F natural, and A flat. The third of the chord is F natural, which means we want to use F natural as our new bass note. We're not changing the D flat major triad, all we're doing is putting it over the note F, which means it's now in first inversion. If you're into chords and musical notation, the Neapolitan chord is most often seen as an N6. Here's our final example with our new first inversion Neapolitan chord. Though it's best used sparingly, the Neapolitan chord is one of my favorites to use in music. Anyway, that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.